Hey, welcome back, ladies, to Don't Let the Old Lady In. And this is number 2. And the title today, in Conversations with Lorie, is The Whisper That Changed My Life. Dear friends, I am so glad you're here. And last week, if you were with me, we talked about something I've come to believe after decades of being a nurse and through my own health journey that is important. That is, your body is always communicating with you. Today, I'd like to take that conversation one step further because sometimes it isn't just your body that whispers. Sometimes it's your inner wisdom. Have you ever had that feeling you couldn't explain? A quiet nudge just to make a phone call or to ask one more question, or to get something checked, or maybe to say yes to an opportunity. Now, to walk away from something that no longer fit you or becoming. I think we've all possibly in all of our years, I imagine a lot of you have been living a few years like myself. There have been times where you just kind of get this feeling, I gotta let this go. And one of these whispers actually changed my life. Years ago, I noticed a very subtle symptom. Honestly, I would have easily ignored it. And I've referenced it last week. There was no dramatic pain except for maybe 3 weeks of something, but no flashing, bing, 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 major warning sign. And you know what? Life was busy. I really could have told myself, and I did, it's probably nothing. Anybody else out there ever do anything? Drop a comment. Yeah, no, it's nothing. It'll go away. Anybody else ever said that? But at this particular time, something inside of me, in fact, I was at a doctor's office and I forgot to mention it. And when I got home, I had that nudge. And as a nurse, I knew there were times when watching and waiting were appropriate. But I also knew there were times that paying attention was way, way more important. So I listened. I had that nudge. That decision ultimately led me to discovering my pancreatic condition. And looking back, I'm so deeply grateful I didn't dismiss that quiet inner voice. Now, I want to be clear. Listening to your intuition doesn't mean replacing good medical care. That is ultimately the most important. And it doesn't mean, jumping to conclusions or assuming the worst. To me, intuition and evidence aren't opposites. They're partners. So, one invites us to pay attention, right? And the other helps us to understand what's happening, right? Our intuition talks to us. Medicine tells us what's happening. Over the years, I've noticed something really interesting. Some of the healthiest people I know are deeply curious. They don't panic. They don't ignore. They simply ask, what is my body telling me? What questions should I ask? What information do I need? That curiosity is powerful. And it's something that every one of us can cultivate, ladies. This wasn't the first whisper that shaped my life. I spoke about a lot of that last year. 5 years, I just knew I was supposed to be a nurse. Never doubted it. When I was 16, I heard another whisper. After years of believing I was shy, I was the shy girl because grandma told me I was, but that's a whole nother story. When I was 16, I said, hold on a minute. I'm not having fun as a shy girl. I'm getting nothing done. Nothing done. So I just popped out of my shell and off I went. And years later, I told you last week, I had another whisper, to get control of my life and I had lots of challenges at the time and angst and yada, yada. That's when I discovered meditation. So that was another whisper, like, this is what you need to do right now to be better. And so again, when I was recovering from surgery, I was shown this new profession that I took, healthcare advocacy, and I've been doing that. And so each time I had a choice. I could ignore it or become curious enough to explore it. And I don't believe every feeling is a message, but I do believe there's wisdom, total wisdom in slowing down long enough to hear ourselves think. I talked last week about stillness, so important. And you can be in a stillness mode, a meditative mode, even with chaos around you. I've learned that. And you know, today's world is noisy, to say the least. Notifications, news, expectations, opinions. Sometimes the loudest voice in our gut is not even heard. What if we made a little more space? What if we made just a little more space to hear this inner voice? Maybe that looks like 5 quiet minutes with your morning coffee. One of my previous students could not meditate. I said, what do you love to do when you get up? I just love my cup of coffee, she said. By myself before the day gets going and it's quiet. I said, what about doing some deep breathing? And that's what she did, and she said it was pretty life-changing. You know, maybe go out for a nature walk. Maybe it's prayer, maybe it's the rosary, maybe it's meditation. However you find stillness is what's important. I believe it makes room for a lot of clarity too. And so before we finish today, I'd love to leave you, like I said last week, we're going to have a question with the question of the week. Think back over the last year. Was there a moment when you already knew the answer but talked yourself out of it? A time where you heard that inner voice and didn't listen? I don't want you to judge yourself. Just notice. Be still and notice. Awareness is where the growth happens. I thank you for inviting me into this conversation. Please drop some comments on conversations you have to in the future. I'm hoping that I'm creating this women's wellness circle that is like this, conversations that we can have. I can support you, we support each other, because one of the major things that came out of the last course I ran, which was a wonderful conscious aging course, was that lots of great things came out of it, but there was a common thread. The ladies all love to be together, sharing, caring, supporting, and moving ourselves forward, uplifting each other, right? So till our next conversation, ladies, promise me you'll listen to your body, trust your inner wisdom, stay curious, and remember, it's never too late to become the woman you were meant to be. Don't let the old lady in, and until next week, I can't wait to have a conversation next week with you. Until then, be well.